Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller. As Chair of the Board, I welcome you to this June 21st, 2022 Board Working Session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our Communications Manager, Emily Kaiser, will describe how our meetings operate, how to access the agenda packet, and how people may participate remotely. Emily.
Thanks, Commissioner. There are multiple ways to make public comment during today's meeting. Whether you're joining us in person or virtually. If you're here in person and would like to make public comment, please fill out the sign-in sheet now. If you're joining us virtually, we'll ask that you virtually raise your hand at the appropriate time in the agenda. If you are joining us virtually, the chat feature on this Zoom meeting is available only as technical support for users on their computer or smartphone. If you're experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, please submit a comment in the chat feature and I will help you troubleshoot. If you're a staff member experiencing issues, please contact the IT help desk for assistance. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video recording will be posted to wcroads.org in the coming days. There are printed copies of today's working session agenda and presentations on the table here, and it's also posted to wcroads.org. There's a link available to the agenda in the chat if you're joining us from your computer or smartphone. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Emily. I now call this meeting to order and ask
I believe is
Aaron, Emily.
Aaron doing the roll?
No, it's Emily today.
Okay.
Emily today. Emily to call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller,
Present.
Vice Chair Rod Green. He is delayed and should be joining us in a little bit. Commissioner Douglas Fuller.
Present.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Here.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum.
Present.
And the following directors are also in attendance this morning. Managing Director Cheryl Siddle, Director of Engineering, County Highway Engineer Matt Maxinell, Director of Operations Adam Lape, and Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman has an excused absence.
Thank you, Emily. At this time, our first agenda item is public participation. This is the time set aside on the agenda to receive comments from the public. This is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Emily will explain how people may be recognized to offer comments to the board. Emily?
Thank you. So since this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendees, we will take turns between those attending in person and virtually. For virtual attendees, we ask that you virtually raise your hand now. If you're viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants or Reactions button at the bottom of your screen and then the Raise Hand button. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. I will unmute virtual participants with raised hands one at a time. I will announce your username or the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Please share your name and address before beginning your comments. For in-person attendees, we will start with those of you who've signed up on the sign-in sheet as you walked in. If you didn't sign in, you're still welcome to make comment. I'll notify you when it is your turn. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to share their comments with the board.
Thank you, Emily. Are there any hands raised at this time or anyone who has signed in to comment?
Not at this time.
Thank you. So we will move on to our employee attraction and retention update by our Director of HR, Nicole. If you would please join us at the podium, introduce yourself for the record and the recording.
Thank you. So for today's agenda topic, I'm actually going to focus a little more general within the HR department. We have a lot of facets to what we do beyond just recruiting and retention. So I'm going to give just a human resources update today. Next slide. So on our agenda, I'm actually going to introduce the HR team to you and kind of what some of our primary roles are of each of us. Go over what our recent accomplishments have been in the last year since I presented to you, and then what some of our goals for the upcoming year or more are within the department. Next slide. So let's start by meeting the HR team. So first is myself. Nicole Peterson. I am the HR manager and I have been here for 14 years. I actually will have my anniversary on Thursday. My primary responsibilities would be labor relations and employee relations. So when we come to the labor relations, I'm involved in all the processes for grievances, the collective bargaining that we're currently in, anytime we go to mediation, arbitration. When we get into employee relations, I think HR, really we're working for the people. And so there's a lot of customer service. I get down into some of the dirtier things when it becomes investigations, discipline, but working with supervisors on performance appraisals, if employees need performance improvement plans, or as we call them, PIPs, assisting with promotions, anything that's beyond just that general initial recruiting. Also focusing on things like Title VII, EEO, affirmative action, all of our policies and procedures, the final drafts do go through me. I am in charge of leaves of absences. That would include workers' compensation, short-term disability, FMLA, any kind of unpaid leave requests that we have. Also, I do the exit interviews and assist employees through the retirement process, and also in charge of any type of discharges that we have. The job doesn't stop just with employees either, because we do have retirees. So they continue to have questions, whether it be when there's the death of a retiree or their spouse, or what kind of benefits they have, or problems while they're in their retirement. Next, we have Alicia Held, our HR coordinator. So Alicia really is like our benefits person go-to. She handles open enrollment annually for our employees and retirees. Any type of qualifying events employees may have during the year if they need to enroll or change, add a child, a divorce, anything like that. And then problem solving when employees may have an issue that she can resolve by logging in and checking what their status is, or ordering cards, or referring them to our benefit agent if it is an escalated situation with maybe payments, billing, coverage. And then she also is our recruiter. So she handles the majority, and I am her backup when it comes to recruitment of new hires and the onboarding of those new employees. Alicia also actively participates in what we call ETT. That's our employee think tank. New to our department is our safety coordinator, Craig Timmer. Craig has been with us already for 2 months. He has a wonderful background of 14 years of fire service. He worked for the Indiana Toll Road, where he brought a lot of that similar exposure of what we do, only in Indiana, to us. So he's a wealth of knowledge. Some of the highlights that he's been working on since he's been here already is working to improve our safety suggestion program, getting involved in incident investigations. Fortunately, we haven't had a major accident, but just looking even at what the entire process is, helping us to start to close loops on safety suggestions and incidences. He has put together a new hire safety training that'll also be offered to all employees annually. And he's very experienced in traffic control training, and he has been actively visiting our employees at their yards and out on job sites. So I did include the organizational chart here, just to take a look at the organization as a whole again. And next slide. If we go deeper, the numbers that go with that organizational chart, we are authorized for 136 full-time equivalents, so FTEs of employees. 55 of those positions are non-union, and 81 would be union positions. We currently have 3 vacancies, engineering technicians that we currently have posted and are interviewing for 2. And then we have 10 vacancies in the T-POM unit, 2 mechanics, and the rest are drivers. Like I said, it doesn't stop with just employees. So we also do have 105 retirees that we support and 27 widows. And I double checked, no widowers, just 27 widows. Next slide. So really, within the HR department, we are focused on people, kind of that middle person, as I like to think of us, where we're supporting supervisors, but also being employee advocates as well. So our core values are to create and promote a culture that values development, diversity, and growth. So we're really trying to focus on that training aspect and continuing education, succession planning, and just overall development of our employees. And IT's often that it should be on my headstone, or my first tattoo, that employees are treated fairly and consistently. So fairly and consistently is said by me a lot. We strive to provide accurate and timely workforce communication, and then foster cooperation and collaboration within the organization. Next slide. So to focus on our recent accomplishments, next slide. Over the last year, when it comes to our benefits and wellness, last year in October, November, when we had open enrollment for employees, we were able to go paperless. So they can now access our Employee Central, which is online, available to anyone. So they can do it at home, they can have their spouse involved and submit it automatically, and allow us to be paperless. Our goal, I didn't get into goals yet, but a goal would be one day to have retirees also on that same system. So it could happen. We want to continue to contain benefit costs. We pride ourselves in offering high benefits with a low cost to our employees. We also began offering healthcare day one for new employees. There used to be a waiting period. We started that with non-union, and then we do have that as a TA for TPOAM as well. We also changed our dental and vision providers in the last year or two. Most recently, the vision for effective January 1. We've had extraordinarily positive feedback. Those changes really came from the workforce asking for those. I know we've talked about that in the past. And so it's been very positive, and not only offering the new providers, but also having enhanced options for that dental and vision to provide extended coverage. Next slide. As far as training and development, again, we hired a safety coordinator. We continue to enhance our onboarding procedure, and then we continue to send more and more supervisors to MPSI for leadership training. So MPSI is Michigan Public Service Institute, that's held biannually. So we have a group of employees that go in the spring and another group that go in the fall. It's a 3-year program with a graduation. It's designed for public works supervisors that really trains in service and leadership excellence. Next slide. Along also with training and development, we've most recently started to implement stay questions, which came from a suggestion of a manager that they learned about at the MERS annual conference. And so the stay questions, what it does is, I'll tell you what the 5 questions are that we're working with right now. What do you look forward to when you come to work? What are you learning here, and what do you want to learn? Why do you stay here? When is the last time you thought about leaving us, and what prompted it? And what can I do to make your job better for you? So we're encouraging supervisors and foremen to have these one-on-one conversations with their employees really especially beneficial. We're having the foreman do it at the 30-day mark with their new hires. It gives them that time out to have that personal connection with them and find out what is working and what isn't, rather than just giving a performance appraisal, so that they can get the feedback. Just really trying to help us retain employees, learn from what's working, what's not, what are their future goals here. After they've had an opportunity to learn a little bit about who we are and who what their department is and who they're reporting to and working alongside. And so far, we've received really positive feedback. We've had foremen that have taken it immediately and have learned new things about individuals they've worked with for, 15, 20 years. They just never asked the questions, and it provides them time to reflect as well as a supervisor for their group. We've developed new procedures also for supporting employees in their first year. So we have timetables where we're following up with different people within the organization. So say at the 30-day mark, Alicia will follow up with them to talk about benefits. We all know, like on that first day or first week and month, things can be a little bit overwhelming. So we're following back up, just make sure that they don't have any questions. Did they receive their cards? Or, and then at about the 60-day mark, they're meeting with the superintendents to check in at that level for them to get to know them again, make sure everything's going well. And then they meet with me around the 90-day mark. Next slide. Another recent accomplishment, that's over the last 2 years, would be we feel our pandemic response. So just, having had the procedures to make sure that we're compliant with national, state, and local health orders. I served as the COVID-19 coordinator and continue to do so, and then worked with Emily and Cheryl on providing regular communications to our employees about what our response was or what our protocol was going to be during the pandemic. We worked really hard even when vaccinations started coming out, to get ourselves identified as first responders so that employees could be on lists. And at Eastern Michigan University, we went for vaccinations and were able to be some of the first to be able to get that done, and was proud of that.
Before you go off that, I'm just going to interrupt for a second, Nicole. I just want to express my thanks to Nicole for everything that she did. I mean, this really, I know she was hesitant to even bring this up, but she was our go-to person. And as you know, especially early on in the pandemic, that was just insanity. Every day was a new thing that was getting thrown at us. And she was unflappable. She was just like, okay, I've just read this is where we're going to go. This is how we're going to handle it. Employees were calling her at any time of the day and night with whether it was testing positive and the protocols were so, if then, and Nicole was right on top of it throughout all of it. So this really, I mean, we say this is HR, but a lot of this really fell to Nicole, and she handled this just immensely. She did a fantastic job. So I know you don't like it when I do that, but I still felt like I had to call you out on that one.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll put a gold star on your door.
There you go.
Or your
Yeah.
nameplate, maybe.
They were teasing yesterday about monkeypox, and I was like, don't even
I know, right?
I'm not taking on that one. Okay, next slide. When we look at employee acquisition, continuing to expand our marketing efforts. So, we had the billboard on I-94. And then we had, and a lot of this was with Emily's help as well. The magnets, if you've seen them on pickup trucks, they've held up wonderfully. So I continue to watch for them and see them around, and we'll continue to try to find creative ways to advertise that we're hiring. Next slide. And coming out of actually with the pandemic was being able to learn new ways to provide a better work-life balance for our employees. So we did implement a telecommuting policy and procedure that is available for most non-union positions. And then we have expanded our summer hours schedule. The feedback from summer hours is it's very well liked. So I think employees were happy to have it start earlier in April, and then we go in right past Labor Day. So next slide. So looking forward, some of the goals for HR in the upcoming year or so. Next slide. So continuing to focus on employee benefits and wellness. As I said before, to continue to provide the best healthcare options that we can with the lowest cost to employees. Continue to encourage participation in voluntary benefit options. So that's going to take education and visits from us to individuals, more on almost like a one-on-one now that we're able to visit yards and be more present. We've received a lot of positive feedback from that, even from a few visits we've had recently. Believe it or not, I think they missed us. And just, you know, when we look at flexible spending accounts come open enrollment time and the benefits for that for employees and that pre-tax cost savings, deferred compensation, really encouraging tuition reimbursement. I'd like to look at maybe expanding tuition reimbursement. And when I say expanding, not what we pay for, but really, well, so, I mean, we pay 100% currently, whether it's non-union or TPOEM, but there are other options than just going to a university. So it could be where we send people for traffic regulator, you know, like our sign shop at Signal people. If there were individuals in the organization that wanted to take their time to be able to go to that, would that be a good option to be able to send them? You know, the CDL training we continue to talk about, you know, if maybe an individual that doesn't have a CDL in a position here and wants to go and take that training, or maybe other supervise, you know, things outside of just community college and university.
Commissioner Doug Fuller.
To that exact point, I made a note about 3 minutes ago. I would really like us to consider how we could offer to all of our people, that whether they're, I'm principally concerned in my mind with our field personnel as opposed to the office personnel. Our customer base are our townships. The better we can communicate with our townships, the better off we all will be. I would really like us to see how over the next couple of years, this is not something we have to do today, how we could actually offer some formal training for our field personnel in how to interact with township officials. There are benefits greatly that would fall into our laps as well as the township's laps if we were able to do that. Most of our foremen are really good at this. Part of why they're chosen to be foremen. But there's a whole raft of people, as we all know, every time somebody gets promoted, there's 3 more digits that have to be filled out. So whether it's a truck driver, whether it's particularly just because of my personal interest, the guys who run the grade offs are constantly in contact with people around them because we're digging up somebody's front yard typically. And people come out and say, why are we doing this? Okay, well, here's your golden opportunity. And I happen to have used over time in my prior lifetime, used Dale Carnegie classes for these kinds of things. And I throw that just out because it's a well-known and recognized opportunity. I've never sent anybody to a Dale Carnegie class in anything where I didn't feel that my organization, my company, my whatever, was not well served, because people come back from those kinds of things with whole new tools that they had never before even recognized. So I just throw that out as a suggestion.
Yeah, and there's, you know, so many more offerings virtually. And not everybody, I'm not saying that not everybody learns the best. I prefer in-person instruction, but there are a lot of different opportunities. We have a foreman going through a leadership course that's completely online through Eastern Michigan University right now. But that at least provides them the flexibility to do the course, whether it's during work hours and it has coursework that has to be turned in a grade and everything, as a part of a performance improvement plan. So, and I know things are maybe a little quieter for field staff during the winter, and that may be a good opportunity to look further into that.
For one thing, if you schedule something like that on a Thursday in the middle of the winter, it will snow.
That is one of our limitations.
Yeah, exactly.
Next slide.
Thanks.
So, Doug, I think that flows into one of our next goals of developing a formal training program. A lot of that is working with Craig. He has a lot of experience and knowledge with training and being a trainer. And he's trying to make himself become familiar with, all of our equipment. But he is a believer, and myself, in utilizing the expertise that we have here as well. So utilizing those people to help train our employees and having, like when we talk about equipment, have things be universal throughout the organization. So be it hand signals with a loader or something like that, each yard is consistent. So no matter where you're working, that you understand and know the expectations. Next slide. Labor relations is a goal. So I'd like to successfully negotiate a labor agreement. And then once approved though, and we typically, and we do meet with the supervisors, but develop something a little more formal as how to implement the new contract. So any changes that there may be, so that we're being consistent with all the yards. If there's changes in, call-in procedures or any questions that they have, and we have at least one new foreman in the group that will need to learn the contract better. Next slide. Enhancing the employee experience. We'd like to conduct an employee engagement survey. So this was really on my list for last year as well, or even before that. We had the pandemic begin. And then it's been suggested to us, as we've explored options for this, that we wait until the contract is completed, just to get a better representation of the organization, just because tensions are a little bit high right now. I'd like to formalize a wellness program. We focus on safety, but and we've done things with wellness in the past, but to formalize that, I will be completing a compensation review. We did that compensation study in 2018.
Was it that long ago?
Wow. But to go back and make sure that we're still in line with what we have currently. And some of that we'll find out through fact finding and comparing with other labor organizations or contracts from other road commissions, but also looking at the non-union as well. And then continue to maximize the use of technology for information sharing.
In 2018, didn't we have a third party
We did.
do the comp study?
Yeah.
Is that your intention, you and Cheryl going forward to have?
We didn't talk about that yet. I just received a study from them, from Ottawa County Road Commission,
Mhm.
and Oakland's using and they use the same people that we had used, Mark Notley. And then Oakland's currently doing one as well. So when you participate, you receive their results. So I at least was going to take a look and compare ourselves to what their results came back as, but we hadn't talked about formally involving Mark Notley again.
No disrespect of you or anyone else who might do it internally, but I think it adds to the credibility of the outcome when it's done by a third party.
I 100% agree. Next slide. Oh, okay, good. And then another goal, continue to recruit qualified and diverse candidates and really promote ourselves as an employer of choice. So I am looking forward to having some of the truck events come back where we're able to be a face in our community and promote ourselves as an employer that is hiring. Next slide, and then safety. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, like, there was an event in my neighborhood, this past week and we had like a fire truck there. Is that the kind of things that we do here?
Yes,
So,
like if we have a touch a truck,
yeah,
yeah, we would have a vehicle there, some employees, at least for us. So we have some brochures about hiring that actually came from CRA with their initiative on hiring. And then we have a sign and just different materials that we put out.
and so if I wanted to ask for that, I would go through you.
No, I do not
Oh,
coordinate.
Emily.
Yes, it would be Emily.
Mary Ann. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just let me know, Joanne.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
happy to
Yes.
put you in touch with
Okay.
whoever would be handling it.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole, I just have one question. So the third party, like you said, Ottawa County and Oakland County are doing those studies right now. So was thinking, are their cost of living in Ottawa County comparable to Washtenaw County when you do those studies? Because the majority of our employees live within Washtenaw County, right?
Yes. Well, I would say half.
Yeah.
Ottawa is one of the counties we are using for fact finding though. So
Right.
that was agreed on with them, that was comparable when we look at MTF and size. So Ottawa and Oakland, those are just two examples of those that I knew were going to have data for me to at least analyze to make sure that we're still on track. Not saying that I had plans on adjusting,
Right.
but, and then also just happens to be two counties that we're using in fact finding as well.
Yeah. Oakland County's cost of living, I think, is very similar to Washtenaw's. Ottawa actually is surprisingly similar to Washtenaw. Basically,
Really?
its proximity to Grand Rapids is very similar to our proximity to Southeast Michigan, where you're sort of in, you're sort of not. They've got a rural component, but they also definitely have an urbanized component with Holland there. And you get the whole lakeshore area, so their cost of living is not insignificant in
Yeah,
Ottawa
right.
either.
So Saugatuck, all of those are in there. So
Yeah, I'm not sure Saugatuck's and Allegan are in Ottawa, but it's right in that same area.
Right.
because when I think about the real estate,
Correct. Yeah, they're actually very good comp for us.
Thank you.
Next slide. And then lastly, really, utilizing Craig and focusing on the safety. He will be looking at updating our safety policies and procedures, which includes our safety policy handbook. He has already started working on job hazard analysis. And so he's working with foremen on specific jobs and starting to go through step by step on what they do, so that we can make sure everyone has the proper PPE and training for all the jobs that we do here. As I said before, closing the loop on incident reports and also reviving our safety committee and safety suggestion program. So all that's already in the works. Last slide. And if you have questions for me.
So how does Craig interact with, is it Concentra that did the evaluation for us in terms of our job descriptions and requirements?
He wasn't here for that.
Okay.
So the pre-employment screening
That's it.
is still my responsibility.
Okay.
But that did come up at our last safety committee meeting to just make sure it's being properly, to verify that it's being properly implemented.
Yes, that the I believe they're physical therapists that conduct that physical pre-employment part. And, we just had some feedback from an employee that has returned to us that went through it. So knowing he had done the job before and then had to go through that, there was just an area, that he questioned on if it's actually being performed as we had described and explained. So we're gonna circle back and make sure that that's being accurate.
And in terms of the wellness program, I know many years ago, we made arrangements for them to have a discount to use county facilities. in
So
terms-
we had, yes, we had worked with a couple of different, like gyms to offer a discounted rate. But then we didn't have the fitness reimbursement program at that time. So now that we have that, focusing on that, and I'm hearing more and more requests for some expansion on that, like bicycles. Like right now it's limited to more like an indoor fitness type. So exploring, some options like that.
Do you want to explain a little about the EAP and mental health awareness as well?
What would you like?
Well, that we have an EAP.
Okay. And I think that comes, under, yes, so with
EAP means.
employee assistance program. So really getting back into the education and communication to employees about underutilized benefits, in my opinion, that we have available. And with the EAP, it focuses on mental health. You have a couple of visits that you're able to do even just virtually or in person that are covered by the EAP, and then they can direct you to a discounted provider if you're not going or someone covered under our insurance. But they also have legal resources. I know for myself, I've done my will through them. If people are seeking any kind of guidance, if you're thinking about filing for divorce or anything like that, they have resources through that.
It's also substance use, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
there's an opportunity there
Yes.
for help.
So the EAP program, the mental, is it 5 visits that are allowed? Or do you know the number?
I thought it was 3, but it might be 5. I would
3
have
to 5.
Yeah.
But legal is under that, and substance abuse, I think they're underutilized when people are afraid to
Yeah.
go forward.
And a lot of that is covered under our health insurance as well. So they can also then help direct if you wanted to continue ongoing
Yeah.
therapy, they can help direct through our insurance as well.
So Concentra, I had some questions about Concentra. So we use Concentra when someone goes on workers' comp or disability. Is that where they go to? That's the company we contract.
For workers' comp, so anytime there's an injury or illness related to work, that would be the facility if they don't need emergency room care. That would be the urgent care that we go to, correct?
Okay. Some of the issues, I guess my experience in the past with helping people deal with their workman's comp is Concentra uses a lot of PAs, physician assistants. So is there a process, or is the process embedded in the legalities of workman's comp if somebody disputes what Concentra says? If it's a PA and they want to see a orthopedic doctor.
Yeah, that would be, it would at that level. So those type of authorizations has to go through our workers' compensation provider. So we have a claims analyst that would
Okay.
approve that.
Joanne?
Oh, I was just gonna say that was a good presentation.
Thank
I
you.
really liked it.
Yeah, very informative.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry,
No, that's all right.
Commissioner Doug Fuller.
Related, this past year, we have undertaken a new process under some circumstances, having to do with how we do our road patching on limited access highways. And I thank the managing director for taking that initiative. We're still not where Doug would like to be on this topic. And I would like us commissioners, as well as our new director of operations, and engineering for that matter, to start a process. Again, this is not going to happen in 90 days or necessarily even in 2 years. We need to get our people off the roads and into machinery when they are patching holes in the roads. This is so painfully obvious nationwide, worldwide. Everybody in the world patches roads. Everybody who owns one anyway, let's put it that way. And we do it in the United States in spite of all the evidence gathered elsewhere in the world, that we do it at maximum danger to our employees and pretty much under the guise of, well, it's more convenient for the public. I don't buy that, but that's just my personal thing. People who are patching holes in the road need to be in machinery. They do not need to be standing in the road, which makes them extraordinarily vulnerable. And again, I thank the managing director for seizing that initiative and upping the protection for our people. We need to follow that further. And we need to do it thoughtfully so that we know what we're doing. We know what the expenses are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because there's certainly a cost benefit ratio, but the cost benefit ratio stops when one of our people gets hurt. It's just absolutely ludicrous that we would expect somebody to walk to the back of a dump truck in an open lane of traffic and get a scoop of material and throw it across 2 lanes of traffic and maybe get some of it in the hole. And we've all done this, or we've seen it done.
Right, right.
It's ludicrous, it's dangerous, and it's ineffective. Because if you get some in the hole, it was possibly a skilled accident. So I would really, really, really like us over the next while to come up with a plan to get our people, into machinery where at least if somebody hits a truck, they hit a truck. We can fix trucks.
Right, right.
It's really, really, really ludicrous to have somebody standing out there in the roadway throwing things around with a shovel. It's just.
So Craig has been a wonderful addition to our team. He's only been here for 2 months. His eyes are wide open on a lot of things. And so I think we're going to slowly pick away at some of the things that we can do. We're sort of grabbing low hanging fruit right now.
Please.
I don't know if it's good or bad. I think that Mr. Timmer is going to very quickly have a long list of things that can be addressed and we can set up short, intermediate and long-term goals
Yeah.
with respect to improvements. And certainly I think what you're saying is heard loud and clear. And the traffic and the attitude of the public doesn't seem to be getting any better over
No.
time. So those are certainly things we will have to be taking into consideration as we are still trying to do what we need to do.
I was really pleased the other day to be out at North Territorial and Pontiac Trail, where we were building that roundabout, and hear from the inspector on the job, as well as one of the engineers who was visiting, that the fire chief from that township had visited the job site sometime in the last couple of days and had been alarmed by the traffic passing through. And immediately, because he's the fire chief, he's public safety director. So there was a police officer out there within about 10 minutes. You know, if you write one ticket, you've irritated at least 14 people. So write 2 tickets, you irritate 28. Write 3 tickets. And pretty soon, everybody in the neighborhood will know that you can get a ticket out there real quick. You know,
And they're expensive tickets.
I parked one day. I was kind of off topic, but related. I parked one day at a fire plug that I had frequently parked at previously to eat dinner at a particular restaurant. And when I came out, there was a parking ticket on the car. That's fine. You know, I was expecting one. When I got to work the next day, I got the parking ticket off my dashboard and my checkbook out of my desk. And I set out to write a $774 ticket parking at that fire plug.
Never did it again.
I did not do that again. I
Honey
did write the check.
talks, Right?
Oh, my word. So they found my price. Stay out of that fire plug. $774 every time you want to park there. Wow.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. It's excellent.
Thank you. Nicole.
Paul, do you?
Well, I guess we're running a little ahead of schedule. Do you want to move into our second presentation or do you want to take a break?
What's the consensus? Need a break? People look like they're ready to keep moving on.
Keep
So
moving?
let's just keep going.
All right, Matt, you're up.
Good morning,
Hi.
Matt McInerney, Director of Engineering, here to present on an exciting topic. MDOT Federal Aid Buyout Program. Slide, please.
I'm so excited, Matt. I can
I-
understand it.
I'm
Well,
thrilled.
good.
I'm very. Something we've been talking about for a long time. So we've talked in the past, the principles of federal funds, it comes with a lot of strings. And ultimately, we have to follow MDOT guidelines and standards, which are for state trunk line roadways, not necessarily designed with our county road system in mind. They're applicable in a lot of ways, but in some ways, the standard is set up with the freeway in mind. So
Mhm.
what we oftentimes do is we're very strategic in how we use our federal funds. And oftentimes we're using preventative maintenance. For instance, a milling the top course and resurfacing that top course. It's an overlay system that basically limits the strings attached, meaning we don't have to necessarily build 6-foot shoulders or upgrade the shoulders, which would cost a lot and impact a lot of things. So, but if we were just given the money to improve, we may want to consider additional scope. So, these federal funds, not necessarily a bad thing to administer, but oftentimes it's very limited as to what we can apply it to. The other thing with federal funds, it requires a lot of planning. For instance, from the initial submittal to MDOT to the bidding, everything goes right. It's 9 months to go through that process, from environmental clearance to a bid letting. That's a 9-month schedule, provided there are no hiccups, and there are always hiccups when it comes to review and administering, especially the NEPA process. When I say NEPA, that is the National Environmental Policy Act, which is required when spending federal dollars. We have to go through that NEPA process, which involves sometimes State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO. It also may involve an archaeological dig, wetland evaluation, environmental impacts. So a lot of that is oftentimes we get what's called a categorical exclusion, meaning the scope of work isn't invasive. We're just milling and resurfacing a road that already exists there. Nonetheless, you still have to go through the NEPA process.
NEPA again, please.
The National Environmental Policy Act,
Yeah.
I believe it was an
Yeah.
act in the 70s that made sure that if you're spending federal funds, that you have to go through this evaluation. And of course, in doing so, MDOT has a very rigorous policy and form that we have to fill out, which a lot of times we are required to hire a consultant that will cost several $1,000s just for a mill and overlay. So,
You know, I give an example of sidewalk ramp or signal foundation
Yes.
or guardrail post or.
yeah, ultimately, if you're digging, you've got to go investigate. And something as simple as replacing a sidewalk ramp or installing a signal pole. They consider that, we have to do a full evaluation because we're putting a shovel in the ground essentially. We've made a lot of progress to show through CRA and MDOT, hey, this road bed's been disturbed once before, and therefore, really do we have to go to this high level of detail? So again, there are ways to get exclusions, but it's still a process you got to follow.
Is that inside those 9 months, Matt? Okay.
Yes, but if you
Well,
find
we're not.
something, the hiccup I
It's
alluded
not
to earlier-
after, is my point.
Yeah, the hiccup I alluded to earlier is if you find something, then you've got to do more. So that can extend that time period.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, didn't see your hand.
What can you find? I mean, I'm sure there's reasons for this, but,
Well-
I mean, we're not, I don't know, archaeological and historical.
Well,
But we are.
a great example, we have done, with our TAP funded projects. So the pathways, when you're, building a pathway, for instance, next to the Huron River and next to a railroad, you're going to be excavating areas that maybe, you might find some archaeological findings like an arrowhead or fossils. And we've all heard of the mammoth that was found in Washtenaw County when they were excavating, I believe, for a utility project. So they found they had to stop the project. And so you want to avoid that, a showstopper. So you do this this NEPA process and hopefully you can ultimately avoid that. But a lot of our projects, again, if we're staying within the confines of the existing roadway cross section, the pathway is not that. You're going on virgin ground, so to speak, adjacent to the river, where the road doesn't exist. And so that's a great example of where you do want to do a little more due diligence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, environmental considerations when you're doing a project next to a natural river like the Huron River, you have to take more elaborate steps to make sure your environmental clearance is going to get approved. So on to the buyout program. We could talk about strings attached to federal funds for quite some time. It's its own presentation. Next slide, please. So this was in 2022, our legislators passed and the governor signed PA 49, creating the federal aid buyout program. It was a major priority for CRA and something that we as locals have been excited about. That's why I wasn't really kidding. This is an exciting topic for us because we've been asking for it for some time. So this would include road commissions, cities and villages that are eligible to receive these federal funds, but would have to administer it through the MDOT process. Now the buyout priority is really you exchange federal funds, MDOT will use them somewhere in the state, and then we receive Michigan transportation funds and not as many strings attached. So again, what is it? Allows counties cities and villages to exchange these federal funds. MDOT gets the federal funds and then we receive Michigan transportation dollars. And it's a voluntary program. Next slide. There is an exchange rate though. For every dollar of federal funds, we will receive 90 cents. It's a pretty good exchange rate. With a couple stipulations. There's a maximum per project of 2.5 million per project.
So it's a 10%.
Yeah, the exchange rate is 10%. Correct. The overall program has a cap as well. Next slide. So in fiscal year 2023, which will be the first year of the buyout program, the budget is set up for a cap of 25 million. And then 2024, it's 35, and 25, it's $45 million. And it'll be that moving forward. And this is statewide. Next slide. So in order to apply for this buyout program, it's got to be a project that's listed in the Transportation Improvement Program. We often refer to that as the TIP. You'll hear that in transportation planning. Everyone talks about the TIP. So that's Transportation Improvement Program for that funding year. So each fiscal year, and the fiscal year for our federal dollars is October is the start. So it's a little different than our calendar, and why they chose October, I'll never know. Probably coincides
Feds and the state are both on that.
October 1st, right?
Yep.
So a little different, but we've gotten accustomed to it. So it's got to be in our fiscal year that we're applying for 2023 is this first round. We have to finish the project we said we're going to do within 3 years. So that's nice. It gives you some flexibility on when you do the project. One of the major adherences is we've got to make sure that we adhere to the federal wage benefit schedule. That's the Davis-Bacon schedule, which typically MDOT road builders that are MDOT pre-qualified, that's not a problem. That's usually not a non-issue. So that's a fairly easy hurdle for us.
Yeah.
If we're just doing milling and filling or paving projects, so to speak.
Commissioner Fuller?
Matt, is it possible? I don't want to interfere with your presentation, but could you tie this to a specific project?
We will. Absolutely. Next slide. So for this first year, MDOT was told they have to do this program. It wasn't something that was necessarily initiated by them. So it's come together very quickly. And we've got notification of what the program is, how to apply the first part of this month. And applications are due today at 10 a.m. 3 minutes from now.
Let's go, Matt.
Michelle is upstairs on the ready, and we'll be applying at 10:01. It doesn't necessarily commit us, but it gives us the opportunity to participate. So they are due today at 10 a.m. This is a key. Projects are awarded first come, first serve. So that's why at 10:01, Michelle will be sending emails to, as directed by the email address in the form. So notifications of award will be August 1st. So we will find out August. So it's a quicker turnaround.
So if I understand this correctly, this allows us to use money that would go for a federal project to a state project. Is that
Well,
right?
it would allow us to convert our federal funds
Right.
into what would be state transportation dollars like MTF. We'd still do the project. Similar way, we'd still do the scope of the project and we would accomplish it. And that's one of the rules. So you still have to, you can't take it and do something else. You have to accomplish what you said you were going to do in the TIP. So it'd just be what funding source are you using? Using the federal dollars and having to bid the project through MDOT, or are you bidding it locally and using state transportation dollars, the MTF dollars?
Yeah, and I know you're gonna get into this a little bit, Matt, just the cost of setting up a project and all of that is expensive. And it's something our staff is well versed in, but there's plenty of counties and cities that are not. And so this is a big deal to them to not have to go through all the process involved in trying to get a project sent up to MDOT to bid it, because they have a lot of strings and a lot of rules you have to follow in order to do that. And I know you're gonna talk a little bit about that.
So the timeline is we're going to apply today and hopefully we'll hear back the first part of August. Next slide. So what are the benefits? It's a significant cost savings. I'll just share material costs. A lot of what we do with federal funds is paving work. So the cost per ton of asphalt for the road commission's countywide contract that we bid locally, and we have done a lot of millage work in the local road program with this contract. Cost for asphalt is currently $96 a ton. The state mix that we use, that are required to use the 5E mix. Conversely, the MDOT contract for Grove Road, which we bid out here just a little while ago, was $115.50 per ton. So just the percentage right there, that exchange, even though we lost 10 cents on the dollar, we gain it in savings for a locally bid contract. It costs contractors quite a bit as far as administration costs to do an MDOT project. We still have a lot of the same requirements on how to build the road, how to pave the road, and the mixed specifications, but they don't have to do as much administrative submittals, or ultimately there's a lot of cost in bonding. There's costs just administering all the subs, the wage reporting. So it's a lot for the contractors, and certainly they know us through our countywide contract, and there's relationships and also trust in how we do business and what the expectations are. So we see a fairly good, as you can see, competitive price for the cost of asphalt when bid locally. The same contractors oftentimes, but it's a price difference in what do I have to do per the MDOT requirements versus what I have to do for the county requirements. So, any questions on that?
So
Commissioner Yamas?
I just did a quick, so 10% of that cost, that 115 would take it down to 104, which is like a $6 difference between the county and what the federal, but those dollars are, you have a 20% increase. And I'm, like you said, the 10% loss. I was trying to, the savings then escalates because there's more costs besides this right here.
Well, the example here, for instance, the same mix.
Yeah.
Costs us 20% more when we do an MDOT project.
Okay.
So, if it's $1 million of paving we're looking to accomplish, we can, if we have to bid it locally, we could do it for $1 million. If we bid it through the state, typically we see a 20% increase. So that'd be a $1.2 million project if we did it through the state. Now, certainly there's a exchange rate, so you lose 10 cents on every dollar,
Right.
but there's a 20% difference. So you're still netting a 10% savings by
And that's
doing the
what
exchange. You're still netting that
You
10%.
still net the 10%
Mhm.
savings.
And next slide, please. Get into that. So talked about greater flexibility, but that last bullet is really project savings can spend on other road commission needs.
Yeah.
So if we are able to save overall, and we spent all of our money that we exchanged, we save overall, then that can go to other things. That's the good thing. And also, there's greater flexibility in projects. The design project is based on our road system needs. So for instance, North Territorial, you guys are probably all familiar with that route. Pretty narrow, not a lot of shoulders. You've got limited number of ditches.
Got a lot of trees.
A lot of tree canopy. If the road pavement needs more than that top course asphalt, oftentimes we need to do base repairs. By doing any amount of base repair, that puts us in another category for federal funds, and we've got to have a 6-foot shoulder on that road. So that oftentimes well, we can't do North Territorial because that will cost us a lot and it will be very impactful to that roadway. So by having this greater flexibility, a 2-foot shoulder will be just fine in a lot of instances. So that's that design flexibility that county roads don't necessarily all need 6-foot shoulders. A paved shoulder is a very good thing from a lot of safety standpoint, but it's simply sometimes things we can't afford, given our massive amount of road centerline miles that we have to maintain. So,
Or it's going against our community priorities.
yeah, we've heard loud and clear, we do not want that because
Right.
it will impact us dramatically, or it will impact the tree canopy. So those are things that we balance. We try to be sensitive to the context of the roadway we're working on.
So before PA 49 of 22, we returned federal dollars, right? Because there was a,
We didn't ever return the federal dollars we're talking about here.
okay,
So there was a safety grant once upon a time that we were trying to, the goal of the grant was to limit the road clear, the clear zone. So the clear zone is that area, if you were to go off the road,
mhm,
gives you safe area to recover and get back on the road. Because we had a lot of accidents for cars leaving the road for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons why cars may leave the road. And one of the priorities for that safety grant was to get good clear zone area or get better than what exists there today. And part of that grant was to remove trees in that clear zone. And so there was an uproar in the community about a project we had done in a current year. And we elected to say, we're going to put a pause on that idea and push back that safety grant. That's not these funds.
okay.
So what these funds, and I didn't really get into the weeds on the funding, but what I will say is there are a lot of different pots of federal funding. What these exchange rate is for specifically urban and rural STP dollars, urban and rural surface transportation program dollars. So that's basically our urban and rural program. There's safety. It's not these funds. That's not part of the exchange. There's CMAQ. That's congestion mitigation air quality. That's not eligible for exchange.
Huh.
There's TAP funds. That is not an exchange program. TAP is a transportation alternative program, which oftentimes it's the shared use pathways. Economic development funds, which are oftentimes state funds. Those are not eligible because those would be exchanging state money with state money. So they're not going to do that.
Mhm.
So if a project involves any of those funds I just mentioned, it's off the table for exchange program. So it has to be very specifically focused on rural and urban STP dollars.
Yeah, so what we've done in the past, as we've laid out, and we have gotten very creative, Matt and his staff do an excellent job of trying to program out these STP, both the urban and rural. But you're looking at this map and you're saying, okay, unless we want to build bigger shoulders and all the things that Matt's described, now we're basically limiting ourselves to resurfacing, and it means that it has to be 1.5 inches or less as far as the resurfacing goes. So we're looking at this big map of our federal aid, which we all know is only a subset of our system anyways. And now we're saying it has to be a PASER rating of this and above. And there's all the, so you really start to narrow the roads that we can work on. If we start looking at converting, we have more flexibility on where we might be able to do the type of improvement that makes sense for us. If we want to do a little more than 1.5 inches, let's say we even want to go to 2 inches, or as Matt said, we know we've got a road that might be good for resurfacing, but there's a couple of areas we have to go in, we have to do some base repair. This would now allow us to make those type of decisions, and those roads would now be eligible because we are using the converted funds as opposed to this really small subset of roads that we can work on with, if we're following all the rules of that STP program.
The other thing is, the state requires, that 5E super pave mix. A lot of times, we're just milling and resurfacing a roadway. Super pave mix is a great mix when you're building a new road. But when you're doing an overlay, it's only as good as what's underneath. And the goal of that overlay is to really do asset management, extend the service life of the road. So sometimes we could consider, hey, we don't necessarily need to use that 5E mix. We could use a low volume super pave mix. It's a good mix. It'll extend that service life of the road. We really don't care what it looks like because the next year we're going to chip seal it anyway. To again, put more asset management on there. And that low volume super pave, instead of $96 a ton, that cost us $86 a ton. So there's additional savings. So again, it really just our ability to be flexible on projects and to use different materials. As Cheryl described, the scope of work has some flexibility, and ultimately it saves us money. We can either extend the limits of the project, or we could use it on other things. Cheryl and Dan do a great job, as this board has as well, of taking a balanced approach to our budget. So that savings can be applied to those other balanced approaches. So next slide. So, Commissioner Doug Fuller, you had asked, well, what projects does this apply to? All right, so here's our application that went in 10 minutes ago. 7 Mile Road. Again, this is all in our TIP. So fiscal year 2023 TIP projects. And just a side note, thank you, Commissioner Doug Fuller. He participated in Watt's policy that approved our fiscal year 2023 to 2026 program. So we did very well. I'm excited to get that approved at Watts. It's now moved on to SEMCOG. By October 1, we should have an approved 4-year TIP, which is a big deal. A lot of work went into that, so it's exciting. So going back, fiscal 2023 is the fiscal year that's in both TIPs. The current one that ends in 23, and then the start of the new one, next 4-year cycle. So these projects that we're presenting are in the fiscal year 2023. 7 Mile Road between Dixboro Road and Pine Trail, Salem Township. It is a resurfacing project. That means the top course resurfacing. As you can see by the picture, this does not have 6-foot shoulders. So we are limited to just resurfacing the top course, and it's been chip sealed, as you probably can see as well. And you can see the cracks coming through, and it's time for an overlay. We're at the point in service life where we can continue to extend that service life with an overlay. And the estimated cost for construction is roughly $219,000. So these costs that we're presenting are construction costs. Keep in mind, STP dollars are generally 80-20. So 80% of that is federal, 20% is local match MTF. So we'll be submitting applications for converting 80% of that dollar amount to that buyout program, which we'll get 90% of. So there's a lot of numbers there, but I think you can follow me.
Yes, with this road, I thought I remember, some concern from, residents that lived in the area. Was this one of the roads in Salem Township?
I don't recall.
I
I'm
think-
not aware.
Oh,
personally.
okay.
At the one public meeting that we had, I think for North Territorial and Pontiac Trail, there was some concern about just contacting residents, and it was primarily the trees that were coming down as part of the project.
Oh, okay, okay.
Not 7 Mile.
Not my understanding, that's not my recollection.
There are millage projects as well that are along the stretches. I think there's program for 7 Mile Road. So again, we talk road segments, we may have different things programmed for federal aid, for millage, for our seal coat program. So there's a lot of different pots to draw from. So any questions on this particular road segment that we're applying for?
Does the township have to agree to this project?
They do not. Next slide, please. This one is here in River Drive. You can see it's a more of an urban setting. This is over by St. Joseph Hospital, basically from Dixboro Road to Macaulay Drive, which is, I believe, the hospital entrance. We're looking at resurfacing. On this one in particular, if we were successful at converting the federal funds to state funds, we may consider extending the project limits. It's one of the things that I'm sure we'll talk to Dan and Cheryl about once we figure out in August if this one is going to be converted. But this resurfacing, a lot more costly because there's a lot more lanes out there. You can see it's a 3-lane cross section with bike lanes and auxiliary lanes when it comes to the signal. So there's a lot of pavement to do resurfacing on. You can see we've done some spot patches over time. This section got really bad, and we elected to use some of our MTF under the countywide program to do some heavy patching rather than doing some cold patching. We elected to do that here just based on the volumes and the severity of some of the road failures. So this would be resurfacing the top course, and it'd be the whole road. So, any questions on this one? All right, next slide. Main Street, East Shore Drive to 8 Mile Road. This is in Northfield Township in Whitmore Lake, adjacent to the lake. This is a resurfacing project, estimated cost of $205,000. This one, again, we've done this road a couple different times with resurfacing, extending that service life. It's time once again to visit this road segment, and there are also some challenges for the non-motorized and ADA compliance, which we're going to adhere to regardless of if it's state money or federal money. We may have to do ADA compliance law, but we probably will be spending more than $205,000, and we recognize that. But that's all that's programmed for the federal funds for this one.
Is that a bike lane?
It is a paved shoulder. I'm not certain, especially on the right side of the picture, it doesn't qualify because you would need at least 4 feet of paved surface plus probably 2 foot of gravel typically to be considered a bike lane. So we'll have widened shoulders. That one on the left side might do it with the curb and gutter there, might qualify. But unless it's something we sign and do pavement markings on, it's just a widened shoulder for us. Certainly safer than just your typical 2 foot shoulder.
Keeps cars off the edge of the pavement.
Yes. Next slide. This is our last project. We're going to submit application for the buyout program. Prospect Road, from Breland Road to Cherry Hill Road in Superior Township. Again, another resurfacing project. This is a roadway you can see we've chip sealed. extend the service life, but the cracks are coming back. It's time to definitely do a mill and resurface. And so that's what we've got programmed for roughly $220,000 construction costs. And then we'll be submitting an application for a buyout on this segment. Any questions?
Yeah, is that heavily used by trucks? Because I noticed the pavement sort of
Yeah, so
uneven.
our primary road system is where our federal aid eligible roads are, and we definitely see commercial traffic on those primary roadways. Absolutely. Yeah, you can see a little bit of rutting
Mhm.
on some of those segments. It also is a little bit, you know, the picture will highlight the wheel track because that chip seal, maybe the stones may have been turned over and are a little blacker there. So it does look like there may be more rutting that really is present.
It feels like it when I drive.
You can feel the
Yeah.
little valley there.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a great point because rutting is actually a total pavement failure. So if you just resurface the top course, sometimes you aren't going to necessarily address that. If there are severe ruttings, this is a great example of, hey, if we do the buyout, we won't violate any rules because we're able to maybe take care of some deep strength patches to address rutting that we may be able to do with the conversion. If it was a federal job, that would not be an option. We would just have to stick that 1.5 inches and just pave what's there. And it will, for a period of time, hold up very well, but the rutting eventually will come back if you don't do a full pavement repair.
When you drive that road, if I may,
Certainly.
from conversation with Cherry Hill south to Geddes, you'll notice on both sides of the road at random intervals, water right up to within sometimes 2 or 3 feet of the edge of the pavement. It's perched. We can't get rid of it for any amount of money that we can sit here and talk about, which is why you get rutting. That whole roadway is floating on water that will not ever go away. We've tried. You can't get there from here, which is why that's remarkably poor farmland, because it won't drain.
Thanks, good to know.
Next slide. I think that's, yeah. Talked a bit, but if any more thoughts or questions anyone has?
Good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Exciting topic.
Good information.
I just had one other thing before we conclude and then take a break before our board meeting. So this afternoon, as an action item, we do have a topic that is the Fosdick Glen. The developer is requesting for a waiver from this board. I'm not going to discuss the topic at all. It's an action item for a reason so that this board can deliberate during the board meeting. What I did want to do is to just let you know, because this type of an item has not come before all 5 of you. It's been a while since we've had one of these. First of all, it's likely the developer will be here this afternoon. We don't know this for sure, but he is likely to be here. Our intent is that Matt will start with a very brief just description of what has happened so far to date to give all of you a little bit more information. The developer may choose to speak. That will be at the pleasure of the chair on whether or not she elects to allow that to happen. And then whoever makes the motion, we intentionally wrote that as both approve or deny. Obviously, staff has using, our permit rules and regulations. It was denied through the permit process. There already was a request for a waiver from the county highway engineer who also denied it. But we wanted, obviously, this board, in all fairness, this is part of the rules and regulations. So the developer does have the right, or the applicant has the right to come in and to ask this board for a waiver. So we wanted to have as much unbiased, as possible for this board. So that's the reason it's written that way. So whoever would be making the motion needs to do one or the other in making the motion. So any
Thanks.
questions for me before you see it this afternoon?
Thanks. I know I
Yeah,
did a
it's-
motion before like that and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
oh.
it's a little different than how we
So,
normally do it.
Yeah,
Wanted you to know that's why we wrote that up and to just give you a little bit of a preview of what to expect this afternoon.
thank you.
Anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn this working session.
So move.
And support.
Thank you. Emily, if you would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas,
Yes.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum,
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas Fuller,
Aye.
and Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Yes. We are adjourned. We'll see everybody back here ready to go at 1 o'clock for our regular meeting.